He wasn't wearing a suit, no cameras followed him, and no one at the front desk recognized his face. To the staff at the dealership, he looked like just another man coming in to browse luxury cars. But what they didn't know was that he was Derek Miles, the CEO and founder of the entire dealership chain. He had built this business from the ground up, pouring in years of sweat, sacrifice, and soul. And on this seemingly ordinary day, something told him to show up unannounced, to see how things were really running behind the polished glass windows and glossy car ads. What he discovered would shake him to the core. Hidden deep within a sales contract handed to a young couple, Derek found predatory loan terms, outrageous fees, and a dangerous clause designed to trap customers in debt. But it didn't stop there. The deeper he looked, the more disturbing the pattern became. And he realized this wasn't just a one-time mistake. It was a system, one operating in his name, and worst of all, it was being used to take advantage of the very people he vowed to uplift. What happens next? A confrontation, a reckoning, and a CEO who decides that silence isn't an option. The morning air was unusually still as Derek Miles stepped out of his sleek black Escalade, polished to perfection, its chrome rims glinting under the late morning sun. He adjusted the cuff of his navy blazer, the kind that whispered power without needing to shout it. His shoes tapped purposefully against the sidewalk as he approached the glass doors of Miles Auto Group, the crown jewel of his entrepreneurial legacy. Derek was no stranger to luxury. He had earned every inch of his success. From the rough neighborhoods of Southside Chicago to corporate boardrooms, he had hustled, sacrificed, and endured. He built this dealership not just for profit, but as a promise to his community. A place where young professionals, single parents, and working people of color could finally walk into a showroom and feel seen, respected, and treated fairly. But lately, something had been gnawing at him, a subtle itch in the back of his mind. It started 2 weeks ago when a friend's cousin said she'd been given a weird contract at one of his locations. Nothing concrete, just a bad feeling. Then another text came in, someone he didn't even know, saying they were told a promo didn't exist, even though it was on the website. Derek brushed it off. Miscommunications happen. Besides, he had a general manager, finance director, and a full sales team to handle day-to-day operations. Still, the feeling lingered. That morning, Derek had woken up before the alarm. The sun was barely over the skyline, but he couldn't shake the weight in his chest. Something was off. He didn't schedule a visit. He didn't call ahead. He just got dressed, grabbed his keys, and drove. When he stepped through the front doors of his dealership, he was hit with a wave of mixed emotions. Pride, nostalgia, and then confusion. No one recognized him. The receptionist, a young woman with a bright smile, didn't even glance twice at him. "Good morning, sir. Looking for something specific today?" she asked politely. Derek smiled back. "Just browsing," he said, and took a seat in the customer lounge. He kept his sunglasses on and watched. Salespeople buzzed around the floor, laughing, chatting, pushing cars. The energy was upbeat, professional on the surface. But Derek knew how to look deeper. He wasn't just watching what people did, he was watching how they did it. Then, about 10 minutes in, something caught his eye. A young black couple walked in, early 20s, probably first-time buyers. The woman was holding a flyer she printed from the dealership's website. Derek could see it even from his seat. "Zero down, low APRA, for first-time buyers," in bold letters. They looked excited but nervous. The kind of nervous he remembered from when he first tried to finance a car with no credit history and a hopeful heart. A tall, fast-talking salesman approached them. Derek leaned forward slightly, pretending to scroll on his phone, but his ears were wide open. "We saw the ad on your site," the young man said, handing the flyer over. "We were hoping to get something reliable, maybe that pre-owned SUV you've got listed." "Oh," the salesman said, waving his hand dismissively. "Yeah, that deal's not valid anymore, expired just last week, but I've got something even better for you, trust me." The woman frowned. "But it's still on the website. It just hasn't been taken down yet," he replied quickly. Let me show you something in your price range. Derek's eyes narrowed. He watched as the salesman led the couple to a used 2021 SUV decent, but nothing special. The sticker price was $8.00 more than its book value. The salesman spoke quickly with lots of filler. Only a few left. Interest rates are climbing. Better to lock something in now. The couple nodded slowly, hesitant, unsure, but clearly afraid to walk away. Then came the clincher. The salesman printed out a financing agreement. No time to read it, no full breakdown, just numbers, columns, and a pen. Just sign here, and you'll be out the door today, he said, smiling. Derek stood up. He could feel heat rising in his chest. He had built this dealership to protect people like that young couple from exactly this kind of slick manipulation. And now it was happening under his roof. He walked calmly toward the desk, heart thudding in his ears. The salesman didn't even notice him until Derek reached out, gently placed his hand on the contract, and said in a steady voice, "Mind if I take a look at that?" The salesman was slick, too slick. He wore a charcoal gray suit that didn't quite fit, his tie slightly loosened as if to suggest approachability. His smile was wide, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. He spotted the young couple holding the flyer and moved in quickly, brushing past another employee without so much as a nod. He was a closer. Derek had seen the type 100 times. "Hey there, folks," the salesman said, extending a hand. "Name's Rick. You looking for something special today?" The young man smiled nervously and handed over the printed flyer. "Yeah, we saw this online. The zero-down deal. We were hoping to see the SUV that's part of the promotion." Rick barely glanced at the paper before folding it in half and tucking it into his blazer pocket like it was garbage. "Oh man, I hate to break it to you," Rick said, laughing lightly. "That deal expired last week. Website just hasn't updated, but don't worry, I've got something way better for you too." The young woman glanced at her boyfriend, uncertain. "Are you sure? It's still on the site right now." Rick didn't miss a beat. "Absolutely. Happens all the time. But trust me. What I'm about to show you is a way better deal than that." He gestured for them to follow and led them across the glossy showroom floor to a row of pre-owned vehicles. Derek followed quietly, hanging back but staying within earshot. He took a seat in a faux other chair near a display of rims and custom accessories, pretending to scroll on his phone. Rick stopped in front of a used 2021 SUV. It looked clean, shiny tires, detailed interior, but Derek recognized it instantly. It had sat on the lot for over 6 months. They had bought it at auction well below market value. "This baby right here," Rick said, slapping the hood like a used car cliché. "She's fully loaded, low mileage, and right now I can get you in it for just $499 a month." Derek's eyes narrowed. The vehicle's MSRP should have been closer to $19,000. Rick was quoting them a monthly payment that, with interest, would balloon the total cost well past $30,000. And that was assuming they even qualified for the best rate, which Derek seriously doubted was being offered. The couple stood there, hesitating. You could see it in their posture, the tension in their shoulders, the sideways glances they gave each other. "Interest rates are rising every week," Rick said quickly, sensing their hesitation. "You don't want to wait, these won't last." But the one online said no money down. The man asked softly, "How much would we need upfront for this one?" Rick waved the question away. "We'll work with you. That's what we do here. You got a job, proof of income, then you're good to go. Just trust me." And then, like it was nothing, he pulled out a thick stack of paperwork from his folder and set it on the hood of the SUV. He flipped to the signature page. "Here, just sign here to get pre-approved. I'll get it over to finance and we'll have you driving in no time. No explanation of the terms. No breakdown of interest rates or monthly costs. Just a pen and a signature line." From across the floor, Derek could feel it. That rush of adrenaline you get when you realize something deeply wrong is happening and you're the only one who can stop it. He stood, calmly but deliberately. He walked toward the trio. Rick didn't notice until Derek was standing directly in front of him. "Hey there, sir," Rick said, not recognizing him. "Give me 1 sec. I'm helping these two right now." Derek looked down at the contract. He didn't touch it yet. Instead, he looked up at the couple. The young woman looked confused. The young man looked trapped. "I couldn't help but overhear," Derek said, his voice steady and calm. "Mind if I take a quick look at that paperwork?" Rick's posture stiffened. This is a private conversation, sir." Derek raised an eyebrow and gave a small, knowing smile. "Right, well then, let me introduce myself." He reached into his wallet and pulled out a black, embossed business card. "Derek Miles, founder and CEO, Miles Auto Group." Rick blinked. Once, twice, then his eyes widened. He took a half step back. The couple turned slowly to stare at Derek, then at Rick. Silence hung in the air like a live wire. "I own this dealership," Derek said softly, "and I'd like to know what exactly it is you're asking these customers to sign." Rick's mouth opened, then closed again. He fumbled for words, but none came. Derek picked up the contract. He didn't need to read much. In just a few lines, his heart dropped. This wasn't just aggressive salesmanship. It was manipulation buried in legalese designed to exploit. And it was happening in his building under his name, and that was about to change. "Hey," Derek said, his voice calm but firm as he placed a steady hand on the contract Rick had slid across the hood of the SUV. "Mind if I take a look at that?" Rick froze. For a moment the confident, fast-talking salesman faltered. He blinked like someone trying to reboot their brain. Sir, this is a private deal," he said, his tone shifting to something more defensive than polite. Derek didn't flinch. He kept his hand on the contract, eyes locked on Rick's. "I'm Derek Miles," he said, "CEO of this dealership." The impact of those words rippled across the showroom like a shockwave. The couple gasped softly. The young woman instinctively stepped back, glancing between Derek and Rick. The young man's jaw dropped slightly, confusion spreading across his face. Rick's expression changed instantly, first to surprise, then to a colorless, nervous sort of pale. The confident salesman was suddenly a child caught sneaking candy from the kitchen. Across the floor, the receptionist shot out of her seat, knocking over her water bottle. Phones stopped ringing. Chatter went quiet. Every eye in the showroom slowly turned toward them, and then came the footsteps. A man in his 50s, a stocky, balding red-faced, hurried over in a panic. It was Tony, the floor manager, a man who had worked under Derek for nearly 6 years. "Mr. Miles, sir, we didn't know you were coming in today," Tony said, his voice anxious as he extended a hand that Derek ignored. Derek didn't respond. He was already flipping through the contract, his eyes darting across each page like a hawk zeroing in on prey. The farther he read, the worse it got. 28% interest rate unacceptable by any modern standard. $4,000 documentation fee. More than double the legal norm in the state. And then he saw it, buried in dense fine print on the third page, almost hidden at the bottom of a paragraph no one would read. In the event of one missed payment, the dealership reserves the right to initiate immediate repossession proceedings without prior written notice or opportunity to cure. Derek felt a cold chill settle over him. This wasn't just a bad deal, it was a trap, set up to squeeze customers dry and then discard them, and based on how casually Rick had handed it over, this wasn't a one-time mistake. This was standard practice. He looked up from the contract and turned to the couple. They looked terrified, caught between the shame of being deceived and the uncertainty of what would happen next. "You don't need to sign this," Derek said, his voice low but certain. The young woman blinked back tears. We just wanted something reliable. We didn't know." Derek handed her the flyer she had brought in, the original promotion, still neatly folded in her purse. "This deal," he said, tapping the paper, "was real. It was designed for people just like you first. Time buyers looking to get a fair start, and it's still valid." Rick opened his mouth to protest, but Derek cut him off without even looking his way. "Tony," Derek said, his tone steely, "take this couple to my office, personally, sit them down, bring them water and start over, no tricks, no upcharges, get them into the car they came here for. Under the deal we advertised." Tony hesitated for a moment too long. "Why, yes sir, right away." The couple followed Tony with hesitant steps, still shaken but grateful. As they walked away, Derek finally turned back to Rick. "You want to tell me who trained you to push this kind of contract?" he asked. Rick fumbled. I didn't know you'd be here today, sir. We were just trying to hit monthly numbers. Everyone's doing it." "No," Derek snapped, his voice sharp and sudden, slicing through Rick's excuse like a blade. "Not everyone, not here, not under my name." Rick swallowed hard, but said nothing. Derek picked up the contract one more time, then turned to the rest of the showroom. "How many more of these are sitting in people's glove boxes right now?" He muttered more to himself than anyone else, but deep down he already knew the answer. He tucked the contract into his jacket pocket, walked back toward his private office, and for the first time in years felt like a stranger inside his own business. Something had gone rotten inside Miles' Auto Group, and now that he'd seen it, there was no going back. This wasn't just about one deal. It was about all the people who had trusted him, and how many of them had unknowingly signed away their future. The couple was gone now, smiling, grateful, and driving off in the exact SUV they'd originally asked for. No hidden fees, no fine print traps. Derek made sure of it personally. But as he stood by the dealership window, watching them disappear into the distance, his chest felt heavier than it had in years. He had always trusted his team, especially Tony. Back when Derek opened Miles' Auto Group, Tony was one of the first hires he made. A former car lot hustler who had turned his life around, Tony had grown into a manager. Derek believed in a guy who got it, who came from the same neighborhoods, who knew the difference between serving people and selling to them. So when Derek called an emergency meeting that afternoon, he wasn't expecting what he was about to hear. They met behind closed doors in Derek's private office. No one else, just the two of them. The blinds were drawn, and the air felt 10 degrees warmer than usual. Derek stood behind his desk, arms crossed. Tony sat across from him, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. Derek didn't waste time. "How long has this been going on?" he asked, voice low but firm. Tony didn't answer right away. He exhaled slowly, rubbing his forehead like a man nursing a headache. "A few months," he finally said. "Maybe 4 or 5. Derek's jaw tightened. "And you never thought to tell me." Tony looked down at his hands. "At first, it didn't seem like a big deal. The numbers were good. Lux Credit was approving buyers we usually couldn't help. They were calling it creative financing." Derek raised an eyebrow. "Creative, huh? Is that what we're calling 28% interest and repo? Without warning clauses now?" Tony winced but kept talking. "It started when we signed that partnership with Lux Credit Solutions. They pitched it as a way to broaden customer access and increase approval rates. Said it would boost sales and still stay legal." Derek's eyes narrowed. "You're saying Rick, and who else?" Tony hesitated, then rattled off 3 more names from the sales team. Good sellers, people Derek had personally trained. They started pushing the Lux credit plans heavy. Customers didn't ask many questions, and the contracts passed the legal sniff test. So, Derek slammed his hand on the desk, startling Tony. "They passed your sniff test, not mine. I never approved this." Tony sat up straighter, looking visibly uncomfortable now. "That's the thing, D. They told the team you had signed off on it. Said you were too busy to read through everything, but you were good with it if it brought in profits. They used your name like a shield." Derek felt like he'd been punched in the chest. He stepped away from the desk and turned to face the window. Outside, the showroom looked the same, polished, professional, welcoming. But behind those smiles, behind the glossy brochures and sales scripts, something dark had taken root. Then Tony said something that made Derek's stomach churn. "They've been targeting certain customers, ones they assumed wouldn't read the fine print. Mostly young, single moms, first-time buyers, people working hourly jobs, and yay." Tony paused, swallowing hard. "Mostly people who look like us." The words hung in the air like smoke. Derek turned slowly, eyes sharp and cold. "You mean black folks?" Tony nodded, shame on his face. "They figured they'd be too eager, too desperate, wouldn't question a thing." Derek's fists clenched at his sides. "So, we built this place as a symbol of hope, of pride. Somewhere our people could come and not be treated like they didn't belong, and they turned it into a trap." Tony didn't respond. "I brought you in because I thought you understood what this place was about." Derek continued, his voice quiet but heavy with disappointment. "We're not just selling cars here, we're rebuilding trust, I know," Tony said softly. "I let it get away from me. I thought if the money was good, you'd be okay with it, but I should have known better." "You should have," Derek said. For a long moment there was silence. Then Derek sat down, suddenly feeling the weight of everything. He stared across the desk at the man who had once been his right hand. "This isn't just a policy change," Derek said slowly. "This is a reckoning." Tony swallowed hard, nodding. Derek leaned forward. "Lux credit is out immediately. Anyone pushing their garbage contracts is on review. And I want every single deal from the last 12 months audited. Every single one." Tony looked stunned. "That could mean hundreds of files." Derek didn't blink. "Then you better get started." He stood, grabbed the corrupted contract from earlier, and held it up. "This," he said, "stops now." The morning sun hadn't even crested fully over the city skyline when Miles Auto Group's front gates remained sealed shut. Normally by 9:00 a.m. sharp, the dealership would be humming sales staff out front, coffee brewing in the lounge, shiny cars getting wiped down for eager customers. But not today. Today the doors were locked, the showroom lights dimmed. A sign was posted on the glass, "Closed for realignment, reopening soon, with integrity." Inside, Derek stood in the center of the empty floor, staring out at what used to feel like his empire. Now it felt like a house he had to gut to its studs. He wasn't shutting down permanently, but he was shutting it down long enough to clean out every corner where greed had taken root. And he didn't hesitate. Rick fired on the spot. Tony replaced with someone who had not only the skill, but the heart for the role. Lux Credit Solutions dropped immediately, their partnership terminated, their predatory contracts shredded. But Derek wasn't finished. That afternoon, attorneys arrived, people he trusted, not corporate suits hired to cover tracks, but professionals with experience in consumer protection law. He gave them one task: audit every single financing deal from the past 12 months. The results were worse than expected. Over 40 contracts were flagged for predatory terms. Inflated interest rates, fabricated documentation fees, illegal repossession clauses, and loan structures designed to fail. Some of the contracts made Derek physically ill to read. Instead of sending out a PR statement or letting the legal team handle it behind the scenes, Derek did something no CEO is ever expected to do. He picked up the phone himself. One by one, he called every impacted customer. Some didn't answer, some were skeptical. But those who did, they cried. A single mom in Detroit broke down when he told her she'd be refunded her overpaid fees and her loan restructured to match the original advertised rate. A young father whispered in disbelief, "I thought I was just bad with money." A college student said no one had ever called her just to make something right. Derek didn't just stop at refunds, he canceled accrued interest, slashed monthly payments. And in 5 of the most egregious cases where repossession had already taken place, he gave the customers new vehicles free of charge. No publicity stunt, no strings attached, just dignity. A week later, with the dealership ready to reopen, Derek stood in front of a single camera crew and made a promise. It was raw, unscripted, and spoken from the heart. "To the community I built this for, I failed you, not by intent but by absence. I trusted the wrong people and let silence do harm. That ends now. No one will be taken advantage of under my name again." He paused. "Miles Auto Group was built to change lives, not ruin them. From this day forward, we operate with one mission built by us for all of us." And that wasn't just a motto painted on the wall. It became the new DNA of the business. Derek installed financial literacy resources right inside the showroom free workshops every Saturday. He hired 2 full-time advocates who explained every contract to customers in plain English, line by line. Sales reps were retrained and recertified. Compensation structures were overhauled to reward honesty and customer satisfaction, not just commissions. He also created a new department, Customer Integrity and Compliance, reporting directly to him. But most importantly, he stopped being the name on the building. Derek started showing up, unannounced visits, pop-ins to sales meetings. Won conversations with buyers not to micromanage, but to witness, to remind his team that trust wasn't automatic. It was earned every single day. By the end of the first month, word had spread. Miles Auto Group wasn't just back in business, it was reborn. Customers returned not just because of the deals, but because they knew someone upstairs actually gave a damn. Community leaders started referring people. Local schools brought in seniors to learn about budgeting and credit. Derek even launched a scholarship in the name of the couple whose ordeal opened his eyes. He could have swept it all under the rug. He could have blamed bad actors and moved on. But instead, he did what real leaders do. He took responsibility and rebuilt with purpose. And from that day forward, Derek Miles wasn't just the CEO. He was the guardian of every signature on every dotted line. And he was watching. Derek Miles didn't just catch a shady deal, he uncovered a system built to exploit trust. And while the betrayal cut deep, he turned the moment into a mission. His dealership became more than a business. It became a beacon of fairness, integrity, and second chances. Because true leadership isn't just about profit margins or press photos. It's about standing up when no one expects you to. It's about protecting those who believe in you even when they don't know your name. Derek walked into his own dealership to check in. What he found, a reason to fight harder for his people. Thanks for watching this powerful story. If it inspired you or opened your eyes, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Have you ever had an experience like this, or know someone who did? Tell us in the comments below. We read everyone. Until next time, remember, know your worth, read the fine print. And never be afraid to speak truth to power. Stay strong, stay informed. Movie Camera, your channel name.